Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Alayne Sulkin. Alayne is the publisher and editor-in-chief of ParentMap, a Seattle media company that provides daily digital access to essential parenting information, along with a monthly news magazine, targeted annual periodicals, and a highly regarded lecture series. Alayne currently serves on the executive committees of the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, Brothers for Life, and StandWithUs boards. She is actively involved in amplifying other Jewish organizations in Seattle and beyond, such as One Table, UW Hillel, and JNF Alexander Muss High School in Israel. Alayne and her husband, Robert Sulkin, have 3 adult children, Arielle, Ellie, and Maya, and 2 grandchildren, Levi and Stella. Welcome, Alayne. So good to see you.
So good to see you, Shauna.
This is so fun. I've been really excited about this. Okay, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire.
Great.
Okay, beach or lake?
Beach.
Yeah, I feel like you've told me about some of your favorite beaches, and I'm like, she's a beach girl.
Well, when you say lake beach, it's like, okay, our beach is one of the biggest, Lake Michigan. Yeah. So that is a giant lake with the most gorgeous beach.
Oh, okay. So you're swimming in the lake.
You're swimming in the lake, but it's ocean like. So it's, it's everything.
I need to go. So favorite concert that you've ever attended?
Ooh, wow. Having just seen Lady Gaga in Vegas. No, that wouldn't be it.
Recently?
Yes. Last month.
I'm so jealous.
That's not it though. I would say Simon and Garfunkel, which is just kind of aging me, dating me, but so spectacular. Really spectacular.
Who doesn't love Simon and Garfunkel? I want to see Adele so bad.
Let me tell you that I have tickets to see her in London. This is recovery from having gone with my husband a few years ago. And my son, who is such an Adele fan, asking me, why didn't you take me?
I love it. What is something that I and our listeners would be most surprised to learn about you?
Well, that I have a freaky identical twin that is just, you run into her, you start talking to her, and you're like, why is Alayne being so off-putting and rude? It's because we don't know who you are.
That's so funny. I can tell the difference between you guys because I know you.
Exactly.
But I can see if I ran into her without you there that it would be like jarring a little bit. So what's the best thing that you have read, listened to, or watched in the past couple of years? People are binging all sorts of things.
Let's see. Reading, I would have to say our mutual friend Barry Weiss's book, How to Fight Anti-Semitism.
So good.
Simple, clear, stand-up messaging. And you know what? I'll give you a watching, which also will date me. I think I was the last person on earth to watch. Oh my God. I'm blanking.
I have Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Like,
no, that's it.
Is it?
No, yeah,
oh my God.
No,
what?
No.
I'm so proud of myself. I'm like,
this is crazy. So, of course.
I didn't ever watch it either. And I've been like, is something wrong with me? I'm the only human who's never watched it.
Our mutual. So my son, all these people who love Game of Thrones, I had to go to a reliable, great source that I would respect, that would be within my mind space to get a recommendation. So I called our mutual friend, Dawn Gold.
Oh,
and I just put it to her and I said, Game of Thrones, yes or no? And she said, absolutely. And she was
I'm in
1,000% right. I would watch it again. Outstanding.
Who's a person that you most want to meet? You've met a lot of amazing people, but who would you most love to spend time with?
I definitely consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm blown away by the people that I get to meet in the ParentMap space. And, you know, but one of the I will say this not as a buzzword, I say it in great seriousness. A word that keeps crossing my desk, my head and my heart in a lot of ways right now is the word trauma. And I think it's maybe a result of all the, look at what each individual, families, the universe, what has been suffered, from the crazy last couple of years. And so there are some scholars on trauma, a guy named Thomas Hubble in particular, his name has been mentioned, that I know I will meet him and I know I will learn from him, but he's kind of the name on my mind right now.
Interesting. It is all about like when you're asked these questions, because there's not like the one and only. I mean, of course, I would love to meet like Oprah, or spend time with some sort of ancestor, but it's a lot of it's like what's happening right in front of us in this exact moment. So what are 3 words that your team would use to describe you as a leader?
Passionate, strategic, and heartfelt comes to mind. I guess that's similar to passionate.
Leading with your heart. I love that. Probably empathetic, I'm guessing.
Opportunistic.
Yeah, love it. So tell me, we've actually never had this conversation. I mean, obviously people can tell even from your accent where you grew up, but tell me about your childhood, where you, I guess, got this passion. I've never met your parents. So who are you like, or maybe nobody?
Absolutely both. This is a strange thing to say when you have an identical twin sister who is 5 minutes younger than you are.
Yeah, 5 minutes. So you're the older one for sure.
No, and this is a little odd, but my mother actually called my sister her baby.
Oh, geez. And it's just the 2 of you?
We have an older brother who's
that's what I thought. I feel like I've
years
heard you
older.
talk about him.
But it actually, I mean, when she said that, I didn't realize how odd that was. But then
it plays into the dynamics for sure.
It absolutely plays into the dynamic that, for better or for worse, I am a middle child. And I, in many ways, benefited from being the middle child, as maybe more irreverent, maybe not being paid as much attention to, which can be a good thing. But I grew up in Chicago. Sometimes people hear my accent and they're like, is that New York or Boston? Sometimes people are like, what street on the north side of Chicago did you actually grow up on? And I'm like, wow.
Oh, interesting. I've had a lot of Chicago people on the podcast and I can't hear their accent the way I can yours. I love that you've held on to it. It's great because you've been in Seattle. How long have you been in Seattle?
30, let's see, about almost 40 years. That's unbelievable to say, which it's like when you say, I'm glad you held on to it. There was a long time where I wish I could do anything to lose my accent. It's probably why I am completely incapable of playing music, singing a tune, or learning a language. My theory is that I just don't hear the musicality of language to be able to move away from my Chicago accent.
Yeah. What does it mean to you to be like Midwestern from Chicago? Like, how does that shape your identity? And how does, what things are you hoping to kind of hold on to from that?
I think it's very core to who I am. The West, you're born and raised in the West. The West feels so young. And in a sense of, for instance, we have a summer house in Michigan that we go to, and it's just a little bit over an hour outside of downtown Chicago. My grandchildren are 6th generation on that street. And when you say that,
I have chills, Alayne. That's
when
amazing.
You say that, people are like, what? So, what that means. My great grandfather built these cottages. My father's parents and grandparents lived in, small tenement apartments in Chicago, and the community built these little tiny cottages right on the shores of Lake Michigan in the 30s.
Wow.
And my father started going there. My father started going there when he was 3 years old. My mother, when she started dating my father at 14 years old.
Oh, these are like amazing stories. And at what age did you get a sense of your Jewishness, your Jewish identity? Because I know in the intro, reading all of the things that you're involved in, I'm always curious how, like, I'm meeting you who you are today, but what were you like when you were in like 5th grade?
I feel like when I look back on it, I feel like I had no identity, although of course I was steeped in identity. And one, growing up, if the town that I grew up in, Skokie, Illinois, is, kind of famous for anything, it was the place that Nazis decided to march in the late 70s, because that's where the largest population of Holocaust survivors were in the United States.
Oh, that's no surprise that this is a part of you. I get it now.
And I remember being there and with my mom. And so, but I didn't identify. It was just kind of who
it was in the air.
In the air. And it wasn't until, my mom taught Sunday school. That was our community. But I went to college. I never stepped into anything Jewish. I didn't engage. That wasn't my friend group. So it wasn't until my husband and I were lawyers in Chicago. This is, career number 1-ish.
Mm-hmm. Did you meet him in law school?
I met him in undergrad at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And then
you guys have been together that long.
Yeah, we have. Oh my God. I think 40 years this coming summer. It's insane to be able to say, but I dated his roommate in college, and his roommate, we broke up and he left University of Wisconsin. He said, I don't really care who you date, as if I don't really care who you date. Just don't date Bobby Sulkin. And I was like,
oh yeah. Well, Bobby's the triple threat.
Love that idea. Thank you.
Oh yeah. You're like, what a great idea. Thanks so much. That's so funny. And do you remember like when I feel like we didn't actually finish the thought. I just asked you something and now.
Yeah, no. So it was, Bobby and I were living in Evanston, Illinois, which is a great small city north of the city, north of Chicago, on Lake Michigan. And we were lawyers, and Bobby was at a very stuffed shirt type of firm. I think they actually asked him to tuck his shirt in one too many times. And he was like, I'm out of here. What can we do? And I said, we could move to Israel, live at a kibbutz, and have no bills. I think it was the no bills that got him, because neither one of us had really any affinity. And that was really like our own journey together as a young couple. And it really wasn't anything intentional. It was, let's get the hell out of Chicago. It was 20 degrees below zero. We were standing underneath the L tracks. And it was like, let's just go on this journey. And
wait, did you do it?
Oh yeah, no, we quit our jobs. Yes, we quit our jobs. We went and lived on Kibbutz HaOgen. And, Bobby wasn't bar mitzvahed. He had his father was like a Buddhist, Jewish, but Buddhist.
A Jew, yeah.
Yes. And he had, it really was this amazing journey that we went on together that has stuck with us in many, many different iterations over the last 40 years. That besides, falling in love, we have this kind of golden thread bond that we didn't necessarily anticipate, that is a fabulous journey to be on together.
That is incredible. And so you guys were both practicing law. I guess you had passed the bar. And so what did that mean for your careers to kind of push pause?
We were so young, and we didn't have kids.
You're like, we didn't actually give a shit. We were just like, yeah.
And I think, when you think about like your partner, there's so many things like, we were talking about our mutual friend, Richard, who, the orientation that you have, some people like Bobby and I think one thing, no matter how little money we ever had, neither one of us ever wrote down a check in a check register or balanced our checking accounts. Now, if you were married to somebody like that and you were completely rigid about that, it would be a cause for a lot of tension. We were just very like-minded in a lot of ways, and like-minded about our careers. Like, we can walk away from this, figure it out. Went on this incredible journey where we were with, we both kind of grew up in such, like small environments in the suburbs of Chicago.
Right. And your world's just opened up.
And our world's just opened up. I mean, we were with, people from Argentina and Cartagena. And I mean, it was just incredible. So
I'm so envious. Like, I would give anything for that type of life experience. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe we'll do that like 2.0 or 3.0. But I just love that. I can't believe I didn't know that story. And so did you have a sense of, kind of like, I think I have it in me, or I think I will at some point be an entrepreneur?
No,
because you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you started this company 30 years ago.
Yes.
That we'll get into. But
no, I mean,
do you have any entrepreneurs in your family?
I do. My two grandmothers,
grandmothers,
my two grandmothers. My grandmother on my maternal side, her husband died when she had 6 kids, ages 4 to 14. And when I tell you that my mother and her siblings make me look like I am shy without personality, this woman, who was a Polish immigrant, the only way she could survive, because she kept getting kicked out of the apartments that they were living in Chicago, was to they owned a luggage business, was to buy an apartment building so that she did not have to move these 6 kids as a widow one more time. And that
why was she getting kicked out?
Because they were 6 hellions. I mean, these are the loudest, craziest. I mean, my aunts and uncles have more personality in their pinkies than any humans I know. And so she couldn't manage moving anymore. She had to figure out how to buy the building so she wouldn't get kicked out.
So she's an entrepreneur. What about on your paternal side?
And my grandmother, she owned a clothing store in Chicago called Williams. That's my maiden name, Williams Department Store. So both were entrepreneurs.
I love it.
And I mean, I left being a lawyer when I was pregnant with my first daughter, who's now 35 years old. And it didn't, I became a lawyer because it sounded great,
it's what we do. Yeah.
It's what we do. And I mean, I didn't have intention around it. And I remember I was actually spending my junior year. A lot of people went to different places. I went to Denmark for a semester, and I wrote my parents and I said, I think I'll go to law school. My boyfriend, Bobby, was going to law school. And it was met with such positivity, like the best thing I ever could tell them.
Super validating.
I was like, okay. Yeah. And I have to say, I loved law school. I found it fascinating.
Right. Didn't love practicing.
No.
What kind of law were you practicing at the time?
So I was working at a small firm in Pioneer Square at the time. It was called Seligman, Dreiling, Beckerman.
Oh, in Seattle.
In Seattle.
So you moved, but how did you end up in Seattle?
No, so moved to Seattle. Sorry. We were living on a kibbutz in Israel. After about 6 months of that, we went back to Chicago. And the game plan was, my twin sister was in graduate school at the University of Washington. And the game plan was we would just come out and visit her. And we never left.
You fell in love.
Fell in love. And I was going to practice law. Bobby was not. That lasted for kind of a nanosecond. Thank goodness.
Interesting.
And yeah.
Long before meeting you guys and becoming friends, I heard about you, of course, from ParentMap. And I actually saw you once. I don't know if I introduced myself or if you remember this, but I saw you in the lobby of Zulily. Do you remember this?
Yes.
I don't know if,
yes.
But I kind of knew who you were. You kind of knew who I was. And you were doing business, I think, with Zulily. And I remember hearing about Bobby as like the #1 lawyer, like in the country. Like everybody's like, this guy has never lost a trial ever. And he's so chill. I would love to be a fly on the wall and watch
the
him
client
in action.
he will never take on appropriately. Yeah.
Yeah. And so where did you get this idea for ParentMap? Was there, I mean, obviously it's the coolest publication, magazine, digital.
Thank you.
It's so much content that's incredible.
Thank you. So originally, I mean, I left law. I had Ari, and it's kind of antithetical to owning a parenting media company, but I had to get the hell out of the house and do something. I just was feeling like I did not want to go back into law. And I literally took a job. Honestly, I think at the time it was for under $10 an hour, answering the telephones in the third floor of the then publication, Seattle's Child, answering phones just to get out of the house. And that was the beginning of a completely unpredictable career in parent and publishing. So, I mean, the short story of that is I came in with no intention of doing anything other than just getting some adult engagement. And
that's almost like ha for those who know you. Like,
right.
You don't do anything. It's like go big or go home, Alayne style.
Right. But I, I mean, I think one of the things, and this is just from a, really from a business happiness perspective, is it sounded so good, to say that I was a lawyer, and it didn't fill me up in any way. And so I had to be willing to shut a door, literally shut a door with complete, lack of knowledge of what I would possibly do. And taking something where, if your ego, every one of us has it, your ego is like, oh, I'm a lawyer. That had some meaning to it, to I am going to take a job just to answer phones in a, small media business. And that's okay. And what happened, fast forward, I loved it. Like I engaged with the person who was the owner. We became partners. My instinct, and maybe this comes from my grandmother's, was if there was one publication, why couldn't there be 6? If we could publish, why couldn't we publish books? If there are great people that are writing these books, why couldn't they be speakers? Why couldn't we have a lecture series? So it was just very, exciting and intuitive to me to kind of define then a print media business by whatever way parents can receive quality content and research, we can deliver it to them.
Yeah. Well, when I first moved here, I depended on it. I mean, of course, the kids are now older and I depend on it in a different way, but I depended on it for my schedule, like what to do with the kids. Yeah. I would look up all the camps. I would kind of sit there and lay out my whole summer using ParentMap. And then, of course, attend the lectures. And so how has the business changed over those 30 years? What is it today versus what it was when you were kind of like answering phones?
Yeah.
It's no longer, it's not a different name. And
yeah, I know. I mean, ParentMap, I would say substantively, really not different. And in this sense of parenting is as old as womankind. And parents, as has been said for forever, it's the single most important job that you'll ever have that you have zero training for. And, that is an overwhelming thought. And with all the good intentions, what you bring to the table as a parent, given what you were given or what you reject from what you were given or what you are willing to learn is so vast. And so what I would say has changed dramatically is, like a lot of people who are founders of businesses, they run on a lot of chaos and enthusiasm. And one of the most important gifts that I was given was the ability at some point to self-reflect at how much damage I was causing around my team because of my, like endless, let's do this, let's do that, enthusiasm to keep moving forward.
Like the goalpost kept moving, and
the goal. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I haven't really analyzed where that comes from, but realizing the burnout factor, and that, and we have a very, like I always say about my business, we're very democratic until it comes to selecting the cover image for the magazine. Like, I feel so strongly about that. But what I realized was we had such great products, and that we did not have the business infrastructure requisite to optimize. Like, shame on us that we weren't profitable, and we had a good product. So I will never.
What is the business model exactly?
Well, the business model is based really on advertising and sponsorship. I mean, our range of clients from, the Gates Foundation to the smallest violin teacher is pretty vast. And, two people who, I walked in one day to our mutual friend, Dan Levitan's office, and showed him my financials. Cause I was like, I've got to shift. Like, this is causing so much stress for me and people around us within the business. And he looked at my financials and he said, so Alayne, this is a hobby. And I was like, you know what? It felt a little bit like the slap I needed, truly. Like I really paused and I thought, well, why wouldn't someone say that? And then I went from that meeting to a meeting with another friend, Robbie Cape. And he looked at me and he said, do you think you have the right team? And I was like, not exactly. And he said, do you have a plan, that you stick to? And I was like, not exactly. And then he said, are you accountable to anyone for what you do? And I said, not exactly. And it was those two messages in tandem. Like, I had to hear it once. And I realized that I had to build a team around me that, we ended up hiring a woman who came in for a job as an accounting assistant. I never met her until, she had been working for us for a couple months. It turned out, looking at her resume, she had been the head of international compensation for Starbucks, the prototype of a ParentMap employee, traveling all over the world, 2 little boys, and couldn't balance work and her family life. And so she sought out ParentMap, got this job as an accounting assistant. I looked at her resume and I'm like, I just know there's more that you could do with us. She literally now is our business manager. I have brought the systems that she has brought to us to so many organizations, ones that like Brothers for Life, of stated business goal. It's the ABCs of running a business. I just didn't have them.
Interesting. So what is the prototype? If there are people who are listening who are looking for a job, what is the prototype of a kind of ideal ParentMap employee? And what do you guys do to differentiate yourselves in this kind of like war on talent moment that we're in?
Well, I would say it's gotten a lot harder because we have always been a virtual business. So that's a differentiator. Yeah, that always was a differentiator, and it isn't so much anymore. But I think one, if we are absolutely a mission-driven business that lives and walks our values. So, there is.
I actually have your values here, Alayne. It says brand values: be the community for the community, be authentic, focus on the future, educate ourselves and others. I love that.
Well, and I think one of the things that so many people come out of a corporate setting, and when you're interviewing someone and they ask you if you have a handbook, I'm like, we have a 28-page fabulous handbook of policies, and trust me, if we need to pull it out, it's probably time for you to go. which really defines the infrastructure of our business, which is if you
need scrappy adults, self-motivated.
Exactly. And, and people that don't, I mean, not that you shouldn't have a manager, but, you know, look at the moms, and I'm saying moms because it just so happens we barely have male employees. They're usually in the tech space right now. We're 100% female, but,
I love it.
but women traditionally, I want you as an employee to be able to drop off your kid, pick up your kid. And I really don't care when and how you work, as long as the deliverables are there. And there is a level of trust that is created, and it's not for everyone, because it's just not for everyone. But
it's how I run my business also. And I feel it's good because I feel like I'm creating a company I would want to work at as a working mom.
Exactly.
And you're doing the same thing. And it's about values. Like your identity is so much a mother, a grandmother, but also an executive. And you can't really be both if you feel like you have to kind of fake that you're doing something, but you're really like dropping your kid off.
Exactly.
Like,
no, and it's like the
tension
of that. Like, I remember listening to a female lawyer being interviewed on NPR a couple of years ago. And she was saying how the structure of billable hours was so antithetical to her life as a mother. So as the most intelligent, highly efficient, productive lawyer, it wasn't serving her or the firm in how that structure is built.
Right. Or the clients probably.
Exactly. So, this is like, you know what? If working from 8 o'clock at night till 11 works for you because your kids go to bed and you get to hang with them in the afternoon, that's fabulous.
Right. Right. So having this business for 30 years, I've been in recruiting for 27, and I joke, my team's like, don't say that, say like 15, whatever. I'm actually proud of it. I feel like, I'm coloring my hair, but like the gray hair is actually, I'm proud of that. And things have changed. We didn't even have the internet when I started recruiting. And now we have access to so much data and so much information that we can learn through technology. What are you learning through data about your business as far as like, what are people searching for the most on ParentMap? And what's the most successful part of the business? And where are you going with the business? 3 kind of big questions.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I always think we have the most extraordinary team. And I think, how can it possibly get better? And, of course, people come and go. We have some very, very long-term employees, and they're gifted in the analytics space that I love learning, because it's not a strength of mine, but, seeing where people engage. And then there's so many surprises. Like you said, Shauna, how, you would sit and look at our, summer camps issue and chart out every week of what your kids are doing. We define our content in these kind of 2 extreme spaces. And of course, there's a lot of overlap, broccoli to popcorn. And a lot of the fun, a lot of what
I like popcorn. I like broccoli too.
Well, a lot of the analytics, that would be our calendar, our out and about activities, is the entry point for a lot of people, because, it's on a cold,
it's tactical. It's much more tactical.
And, look I'm very mission driven about the business. We always have, we'll say on the broccoli side, health development. We always have mission driven content, around gun safety, anti-racism. And so, there's a lot of surprises. And I'll give you an example. This year, we kicked off our lecture series in September with 2 men. One, Khalil Gibran Mohammed, who is a professor at Harvard, well known for his work in the DEI curriculum space. And he was interviewed by Jeffrey Robinson, who has created a 400-year chronicle on racism called the Who We Are Project. It's about to be launched. A documentary is about to be launched, and it's gotten tremendous praise. Jeffrey is local in Seattle. And when Jeffrey first came to us and we decided that we would do his 3-hour presentation, I begged him, can we please, is there a way to make this an hour? You're not going to get parents to show up. He would not take a minute off of the presentation. And sure enough, we did it twice. We did it for, what we'll call influencers in the parenting media space, not is legislators, educators, leaders of private schools, heads of schools, politicians, everyone, is leaning in on the DEI space. And they sat for 3 hours twice, 2 different audiences. And so I would never have predicted that in retrospect, that we would have audience. And then fast forward, Jeffrey then did this interview with Khalil Gibran Muhammad. We partnered with 5 other media companies in the country, New York, Chicago, Detroit, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. And he had thousands of people engaged nationwide, which is, in a parenting space, it's not about resilience or tenacity or, kind of core parenting issues, but it shows the thirst for this kind of information, which, I am super proud that we lean in on.
Yeah. And how have you seen the subject of mental health get more, I guess, recognition and need? I just look back. I mean, I've got 3 teenagers now, and the stuff that they're bringing to the house and talking about is so different than what I was thinking about. Although maybe it was just because it wasn't talked about, but it just seems so much more prevalent. And now more than ever with COVID, like, what are the themes that you're seeing in mental health?
It's kind of the perfect storm equation. So, everybody has lived through this, and thankfully, kids are mostly back in school, but over the last year and a half, I mean, the God forbid level of suicide, isolation. And, look, you think about the fact that kids, big, middle, high school, kids having this screen and no authority figure. There's not a counselor, a teacher who's witnessing what's going on in your student, your child, your student's world. So that level of isolation isn't identified, or bullying. And so, a tremendous elevation in those challenges for mental health in kids. Yeah. And I mean, look, I mean, we're not going to get political, but the fact that the places that could be open, whether it was pot shops or bowling alleys before schools, was just, I mean, it's maddening,
It's so maddening. Yeah. I almost don't even think that's, well, maybe it is political. I just feel like as a mother, I don't know one mother or one child that didn't want to go back to school.
Right. And, I mean, I think about my staff who has, every single person with, 2, 3, 4, 3, one person who has 3 little boys, very close in age range, young, who's like, there's simply not enough wine on planet Earth to get me through this.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, totally. So tell me about the business as far as the readership. I know that you offer a monthly magazine subscription. What are some of the other ways that people engage in content? Are you doing in person?
Not in person.
Things are changing right now.
No, we're not.
Yeah,
No, everything's virtual. And, I mean, our lecture series is fantastic because I just love seeing,
oh, it's incredible. But I used to go to them in person.
Yeah. No, I mean,
digital people are a little bit, what's the word?
Zoom fatigue.
Over it. Lethargic, Zoom fatigue. I mean, I get invited to so many things, and I as much as the content's incredible, I'm like, I can't do it. So how are you getting people to engage?
Honestly, I should be like, yes, we saw, that this was going to be this way. We are literally in awe of the numbers we're getting this year. They're better. And I think there's 2 reasons. One, it's really audacious content that is obviously calling people. One. we had John Gottman, who, every year people are like, okay, you're really, our team internally when we sit and brainstorm about who we're going to have speak, and people are like, again, you're going to have John Gottman. And I'm like,
he's incredible.
And I'm like, okay, you can sit around the table and ask parents, what do they want to talk about? ADHD, different development things, tenacity, whatever. Okay, relationships get the universal nod. And so, we just had him, and it was remarkable. Like, that content draw is insane. I think the other thing is how our team managed to get ahead of this so that in May, we actually had the entire series built out from September through June of 22, so that anybody who was getting on could click and get the entire lecture series and sign up for it, like we all do. I mean, it's aspirational. Not everybody shows up, but one click, everybody could sign up for every talk. So, we, again, as I said to you at the beginning, love to get into podcasts because you've got
to get into podcasts. Yeah. No, it's a lot of work, but it's really fun. And I think you would obviously crush it, but I'm curious, like day to day, how are you spending your time? Like, what's your job? Everybody's got like a title, but what do you do when you're working?
Okay. So I would say a main focus is working with our management team, is called the steering team. And, right now we're in the absolute throes of goal setting and performance reviews. And I mean, I will say at 63 years old, I have made myself less relevant to the day-to-day while staying very highly attached to our mission, performance, goal setting. And, I think it, number one, puts me in the right place, and it helps elevate an extraordinary leadership team to drive the business. So, I mean, my day-to-day is keeping true to that mission by helping, I work very hard at selecting the speakers for the year and being the voice, interviewing the speakers. I stay very close to the financial management of the business and work very closely with the sales team. So, I'm you're
in your exact perfect lane. I mean,
I think so at this point.
That is what you should be doing. And so when you're not working, I know you're on so many boards and you're so involved and so engaged. How do you prioritize your time as far as figuring out what to say yes to? Because I know it's really impossible to say no to you, but who's tapping on your shoulder, and how do you decide where to put your time?
I've had such long experience, from boards of schools where like the day-to-day is really like, it's really like being in a business, to finding the board positions that are super high functioning organizations that just speak to my values and the things that I care deeply about. And usually that always means impacting, the next generation. So, I have figured out my sweet spot in that space, so that, one of my dear friends, the founder of Listening Mothers and Community of Mindful Parenting, Yafa Moritz, she was like, I used to, especially when events were live, the number of events that you would go to, whether it was in the Jewish world or it was in the parenting world, were literally like in the hundreds. And it's like,
you're exhausted.
And it's like, and you really have to think like, this is one of the blessings, one of the finding the silver linings of, the pandemic, which is all of us found a life in balance differently. And like many people suffered, but like organizationally, many things thrived with so much less rigor or wasted effort to make things happen. And that's like a beautiful thing, from our environment to our own health and well-being.
I completely agree. So my ultimate question for you, I have so many more, but I want to be mindful of your time and I'm so grateful for it. is what fuels you. And then before you answer that, I just have to say, you as a leader, you as a mother, and as a friend, I think I've told you this before, but I'm just saying it publicly. Like, you are someone I really admire, and you are, whether you know it or not, like slightly a mentor of mine. And I'm just I wish that there were just more of you, because I find you incredibly inspiring. So I'm glad that you were on the podcast.
I physically have goosebumps from head to toe because, back at you. I really, no, I mean, I think really what fuels me is I know that, it's just so authentic. You can't make this up. It's like when you're passionate about things and you feel the contagious energy, whether you're just sitting, I just came from a board meeting for 4 days in Florida where, I love that you can sit still and actually not move for 4 days and go on the most magnificent journey of your lifetime. And so, I think like how lucky to have found that professionally and in my, volunteer life. So I think that if you're lucky enough, not everyone can, but if you find that passion, the things that move you and, the calling, I literally fell into being in the parenting media space. And I think, for myself, like I had tremendous parents, and I also had a lot to learn. And I promise you, I just spent a couple of days with my daughters in New York. I learned a lot. And a lot of it is like me having an open, trying to not be defensive and hearing your kids' voices to hear the error of your ways. And I definitely have gotten better at it with age. But, it's our lifelong journey of learning, which is just a gift.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.